strikes
Yes, I
again.
saw that.
Parang,
Di ko alam kung ano ba talaga yun, may change of heart na ba talaga si Attorney Harry or slip of tongue lang?
parang marami siyang ganun. Alam mo yung team kadiliman at team kasamaan. Baka naman double agent yan, kaya nagkakalat ng ganun. No, but people are worried. They're saying baka naman pagod na siya, baka naman kawawa na siya. Sabi niya nga, naubusan daw yung pera niya. Pinapakinggan kasi daw ni Ronald Llamas yung TikTok niya. So, doon daw nagpapaawa na siya, ganun nga, kaya nakikihumba na daw. Um, I know this is not related to our topic, which we'll discuss very shortly. Pero can Philippine Coast Guard rescue Harry Roque, bring him home? Meron ba? Kasi marami nagsabi, bring him home. Pagod na siya. Wala na siya pang uwi. Para ako stranded din. Ang mahal pa uwi sa Pilipinas. So, naghanap pa ako ng ticket na mura. Kaya ba ng Philippine Coast Guard magano kay Harry Roque? Pwede ba yan?
Hindi siguro. I mean, we cannot send a Coast Guard vessel all across Europe para lang sumundo ng kay Attorney Harry, no? So I think there are different ways for us to bring him here in Manila, and the Coast Guard vessel is not one of those feasible options to be able to bring him home.
I mean, speaking of Harry, I was reminded of Zaldi. Nagsama-sama lahat kami sa Europe at Zaldi, Harry, Ricky. Is it true na si Zaldi mas marami pa siyang eroplano kaysa Philippine Coast Guard? Is that true?
Yes, that's
Oh my,
true. We only have two Coast Guard helicopters,
oh
three
my God.
fixed wing, and dun sa report na inilabas ng media, no? He has more than of those, no? More than two helicopters, more than three fixed wing. He even has a Gulfstream
Oh wow.
na aircraft. So, para sa akin, sabi ko nga dun sa tweet ko, no? It's disheartening, nakakalungkot na parang imagine, we cover not just the West
Yeah.
Philippine Sea but the entire maritime jurisdiction, and we only have very limited air assets compared to a member of the legislative branch. No, although I'm not saying that he is guilty or whatever, but for me to get such information that he has a fleet of aircraft
Yeah.
at his disposal, parang it will make you wonder what is our priority right now.
Well, we can put it to good use. I mean, pick up natin si Harry Roque. Pwede naman i-confiscate yan, di ba? I mean, many people are pushing for confiscation of ill-gotten asset kung talaga napaka-questionableng tao. Baka naman, we can put it into good news. Now, on a serious note, Commodore Tarriela, sorry kung pinapahamak na naman namin kayo. This is our style. We're more informal dito sa podcast namin. Commodore, what is, ano na naman itong latest na away mo? I thought na naman, Marcoleta naman ang ano mo, iba naman. Pulong naman ngayon. What is this whole pulong thing? It's coming out of nowhere. Nagpapahinga lang kami ng weekend, magandang weather, suntan kami ng konti, tapos biglang, ayan na naman, inaaway na naman, sino nag-away? What's the context of this, Commodore Tarriela? Mukhang very alert ka, no? Basta may sasabihin lang ng mga ibang tao, response ka kaagad.
Well, alam mo naman, Richard, no? Ako kasi para sa akin, kapag pinag-usapan ng West Philippines, regardless kung politiko ka, social media influencer ka, or basta mataas ang following mo, no?
Right.
Ang worry kasi natin, I mean, before, we just ignore those kind of
Yeah.
fake news and disinformation. And now, we realize, ang problema kapag hindi mo in-address itong mga fake news and misinformation na to, eventually, yung mga tao na prone na madaling mapaniwala sa mga ganitong statement, it will mislead the public eh. And then also, sometimes, people would say na, imagine, hindi nga nagre-respond ng gobyerno eh. Ibig sabihin, totoo yung sinasabi niya. And what Congressman Paulo Duterte said, he has, I mean, para sa akin, there are a lot of misinformation there, right?
Yeah.
Sinabi niya pinagmamalaki daw ni Joe Browner na makakarating sa China itong Typhoon missile.
Yeah.
Secondly, sinasabi niya na we're just going to harm the Filipino people instead of protecting them. Third, binabanggit niya rin na we are just dictated by the United States. Binanggit niya pa yung CIA thing, no? Para sa akin, this is just conspiratorial claim na naman, no, na wala namang basihan. So, para sa akin, regardless whether I am a Coast Guard spokesperson or an ordinary Filipino fisherman, obligasyon nating lahat to counter all these lies. Dahil, again, if we're going to be silent about it, there's a high chance na mapapaniwalaan ng ordinaryong Pilipino itong mga ganitong narrative.
Well, what in particular you found very alarming dito sa well, intervention, I don't know what you want to call, rant ng one of the members of the Duterte family. I mean obviously, I mean implying here that no less than the military chief of the country, right, the highest general in the country, is basically parang bayaran ng US or something like an intelligence asset of the US. This is quite crazy, isn't it? Medyo unhinged na to.
Yeah. And para sa akin, napakamali na paratangan mo ng ganyan just that loosely, no? Na parang wala ka namang basihan and you are alleging the chief of the Armed Forces of Philippines and even highlighting na dinidiktahan lang tayo ng Amerika, binanggit na pa yung CIA. Etong mga ganitong naratibo na to, para sa akin, these are divisive noise na walang dapat paglagyan sa maayos na diskurso when it comes to the West Philippine Sea and even our national security.
Of course, Commodore, this is something close to your heart because you have also been accused of that, diba? By yung mga trolls and even some of the partisans of a certain camp, no, na, oh, you're just tuta ka lang ng US, you're intelligence asset, etc. This sounds like, what, does this sound like, I mean, does this sound like an orchestrated black propaganda thing, or do you think this is just ignorance or some ideological bias? I mean, what is your sense of this? Why are people like you, like General Bronner, all of these important officials who are at the forefront of defending the West Philippine Sea, why would they be targeted and maligned in this way? What is your read of this, Commodore?
Well, I don't really want to make allegations, no? But para sa akin, gaya nga na sinabi mo, Richard, no? Etong mga naratibo na to is, we heard this before. This is not something new. Ilang beses nang ginamit itong mga linyahan na to. CIA, Amerika, Tuta ng Amerikano, those kind of things. But if you're really going to ask me, am I insinuating something na bakit, nagkataon lang ba to? Is this just ideological bias? Dahil taga Mindanao sila and all? I really don't know. But the point is, kung ikaw, elected official ka, and you are part of the national government, whether you don't like the commander-in-chief or you don't trust our president right now, para sa akin, ang mali dito, yung magparatang ka ng ganyan sa pinaka-pinuno ng Armed Forces of Philippines. Nobody in his right frame of mind would, destroy the reputation and the credibility of the military chief. Alam naman natin kung ano ang kahalagahan ng institusyon na ito para sa ating bansa.
Commodore Tarriela, I mean, where do you think this is coming from? Why are the members of the Duterte family either silent in face of China's aggression in the West Philippine Sea, or parang parati tayo may kasalanan? Hindi kaya parang tayo may kasalanan for trying to assert our own rights? Vis-a-vis. I mean, where are they getting this confidence? I mean, in your reading, I know you have been in the Coast Guard, but you're also a scholar. What is your read of how successful Rodrigo Duterte's approach to China was when he was the president? Kasi to be fair to the Duterte family and their supporters, parang ang argument nila, and I think you're also familiar with this from Senator Robin Hood Padilla, parang basically ang argument nila is, hindi, ganito ang stance namin kasi nung panahon ng Digong, walang nangyaring gyera or malaking mga kababalagan dahil si Digong ay magaling sa diplomasya, hindi tayo nag-provoke ng China. And because hindi tayo dependent sa US, hindi natin binigyan ng dahilan ng China para maging agresibo sa atin. That seems to be the kind of line of argument. I mean, that's the rational version of their line of argument. How credible is that, Commodore, both as an academic and also as someone who has served in the Coast Guard over the past decade or so?
Alam mo, Richard, sa loob ng 6 na taon ng nakarang administrasyon, there were only 3 incidents na na-publicize. No? Una, yung 2019, mga mais ng taga Mindoro went out to the media at sinabi nilang sila ay binangga ng Chinese maritime militia at pinabayaan silang mamatay sa recto bank. That's the first incident. Nang nakarating ito sa Malacanang, ang sabi ni Tatay Digong, huwag na nating palakihin ito ay simpleng banggaan lamang.
Right.
And then the second incident was in 2021 when the Philippine Coast Guard publicized the photos of more than 220 Chinese maritime militia. Ang sabi ni Attorney Javi Roque, wala tayong dapat ipangamba kasi ang Julian Felipe Reef daw ay labas sa exclusive economic zone. Although alam naman natin na this only has a distance of roughly 120 nautical miles. So ibig sabihin, parte ito ng exclusive economic zone. And then the third one is when Secretary Delfin Lorenzana himself took the liberty of criticizing the Chinese Coast Guard from using water cannon in one of their resupplies in November of 2021. Ito lamang ang insidente nangyari. Kaya ang lalakas ng confidence ng mga supporters nila na mas malala ngayon, mas magulo ngayon kasi hindi sila marunong ng diplomasya. But come to think of it, sino lang ba ang sasalita noong nakaraang panahon ng administrasyon? It was only, Attorney Harry Roque and the Department of Foreign Affairs during that time. Other than that, we were not allowed to say something about the West Philippine Sea. And ordinary Filipino fishermen can attest to the fact na kung ano pinagdadaanan natin ngayon,
Correct.
it is also similar with what they have encountered even before. Ibig sabihin, the only difference is that under this administration, kaya mas iniisip ng mga supporters ng nakaraang administrasyon na mas malala ngayon kasi we allow the Filipino people in the world to know. And last time, I wouldn't believe na itong tatlong insidente lamang ang sumasalamin kung ano ang sistema ng West Philippine Sea noon.
Salamat, Commodore, for that clarification. So, kumbaga ang sinasabi niyo, pag-usapan natin mga main transparency initiative which has significant amount of support. I mean, overwhelming support sa ating kababayan, and it's a reflection of also the trust and confidence sa Philippine Coast Guard and of course Philippine Navy and everyone who's fighting for the West Philippine Sea. Pero basically ang sinasabi niyo dito, Commodore, is that walang basihan yung mga sinasabi ng Duterte camp because tinatakpan yung katotohanan. Basically, wina-whitewash yung or china wash yung situation. Ito ba yung sinasabi niyo? Ito ba yung katotohanan nung panahon niyan when it comes to the actual situation on the ground?
Yes, because there is actually very limited information when it comes to the West Philippine Sea during that time. And again, ordinary Filipino fishermen can directly counter such claim na walang harassment doon. Alam nila yan at patuloy pa rin nila sinasabi na kung anong pinagdadaanan ngayon ay pinagdaanan na rin nila noon.
Could you also say, Commodore, na nung panahon ni Digong kumpara sa mga iba't administration, like, was there any gain that we made out of our relationship with China? Meron bang sinyales ng China ay maging mas mabait sa'yo or maging mas compromising sa'yo kung less assertive ka sa inyong karapatan, including Duterte questioning ating arbitral award, or less reliant ka, or even naging hostile pa tayo sa ating mga aliado, especially Estados Unidos? Meron bang ebidensya to back up that line of argumentation?
There is no evidence to argue na kapag mas naging pro-China ka, na mas naging inclined ka sa kanila, mas naging sunod-sunuran ka sa China, will eventually prevent the China Coast Guard from harassing ordinary Filipino fishermen. There's no such data to support such claim. Alam natin na despite of President Duterte not allowing balikatan exercise in the Philippines and even wanting to abrogate the Distinct Forces Agreement, at partida na yan, siya lamang ang Pangulo na pumunta ng China ng 5 beses sa loob ng kanyang administrasyon.
Yun yung official. Yun yung alam natin official. I mean, there could be unofficial visits to China.
The official, there are 5, no? Hindi pa natin alam nung panahon ng pandemic or something, no? But again, despite of all these activities na tila masasabi natin is inclined towards China, it never prevented Chinese Coast Guard and Chinese Maritime Militia to harass our ordinary Filipino fishermen, and even the Philippine Coast Guard vessels.
And Commodore, of course, we had Attorney Jay Batumbakal also on this show earlier, and one of the issues he was focusing on is yung Chinese illegal fishing, IIU, sa West Philippine Sea nung panahon ni Digong. Did we, from your reading, both again as a scholar and also a Philippine Coast Guard senior official, um, ano yung sitwasyon ng ating mga mangingisda nung panahon ni Digong? Ano yung sitwasyon natin pagdating sa mga illegal fishing sa ilalim na sa loob ng ating karagatan? What are the facts of the case here?
Well, during the previous administration, we were able to document this IUUF activities of the People's Republic of China, kung saan sila ay patuloy pa rin ang pag-harvest ng giant clam, ang pagpatay ng pawikan, ang
Right.
pangunguha ng mga whale shark and all. So all of this had been documented. As a matter of fact, maalala mo, 2 years ago, we publicized all these photos at sinabi namin this happened in 2018 and 2019, no? And that was the last reported harvesting of giant clams in Bajo de Masinloc, for example. When the media asked me, what about in 2020 and 2021 and onwards? Ano na, we
Right.
have photos to say na ang China are still conducting illegal harvesting of giant clams. Ang sagot ko, wala na. They stopped doing that in November of 2019 dahil wala ng giant clams sa Bajo de Masinloc. Desperately, they even came to the point of scoring, no, the entire seabed of Bajo de Masinloc just to get those giant clams.
Um, Again, thank you sa clarification. And kasi we also had Dr. Onda dito sa show na yan back in the day at pinag-usapan natin yung impact ng Chinese illegal activities sa ating kalikasan at saka sa ating karagatan at fishery resources. Comrade Tarriela, meron ba tayong idea about yung damage na kinos ng China in terms of mga IUU, damage sa coral reefs, among others? I saw one estimate, if I'm not mistaken, this was also from the UP Diliman-based Institute on Marine Sciences, na parang hundreds of millions of dollars potentially every year ang nawawala sa atin. I saw numbers as high as $600 million a year, kaya billions of dollars over the years ang potentially nawala sa atin. Meron ba kayong estimate or is there a number or figure that you're para lang ma-concretize natin sa ating mga kababayan na hindi lang ito yung harassment sa mga parang hindi lang siya ito mga pichugi na harassment na bandit style, no? Na this is something on a large scale that really damage our national interest. And we are talking about 6 years of Digong where he did not assert yung ating karapatan sa West Philippine Sea.
Well, I won't contest that. No? If the UPMSI already provided you with the data, I won't contest that. Para sa akin, they are the authority when it comes to those scientific supported evidence. No? But I would definitely agree ang presensya ng Chinese fishing vessels, the Chinese maritime militia, and the illegal presence of the Chinese Coast Guard in Bajo de Masinloc and other parts of the Palayan Island group is totally devastating our marine environment. The mere fact that they are using their anchors and they also have crew on board, it would definitely pollute the waters in the West Philippines.
The reason of course in-emphasize ko rin yan, Commodore Tarriela, is because parati sinasabi ni Digong na kung mabait tayo sa China, hindi lang sila maging mas mabait sa atin sa West Philippine Sea. Marami tayong makukuhang investments, marami tayong makukuhang development aid galing sa China. And yet, para ang klaro dito is, I'm not sure about yung development investments. Hindi ko pa rin nakita yung mga big ticket infrastructure projects ng China na sinasabi nila saan yung railway sa Mindanao, saan yung high-speed railway sa Subic and Clark. Pero yun nga pero pagdating sa mga lost catch, 'di ba? At saka yung damage sa ating kalikasan, klarong-klaro naman ang mga numbers. In fact, some of these are conservative estimates given how difficult it is to exactly estimate yung impact ng IUU. And the reason why of course, kung mention natin IUU is because is it correct to say na most of this, ang expectation natin is from the Chinese side of the equation, not from Viet. Because there are other countries who are doing also illegal fishing sa ating karagatan, di ba? May mga Vietnamese, may mga Taiwanese, mga ganun. But is it correct to estimate na karamihan yan yung mga barko na galing sa China?
Well, of course, if we're going to base it on the number of vessels deployed, no, then of course it is directly proportional. The more vessels that you have, the more possibility that you're going to destroy the marine environment. And having said that, alam naman natin kung gaano karaming bangkog ang Chinese Maritime Militia and Chinese fishing vessels are entering within our own exclusive economic zone. So anybody can argue that Chinese government really has a greater impact of destroying the marine environment.
Yeah, so I pulled out the exact number, 33 billion pesos a year, no? According to Dr. Onda, this is in 2019. So maybe the number even got worse throughout the year. So ipopost ko yung link sa baba dun sa mga followers natin who want to know about this. This is an estimate that was released by Dr. Dio Florence Onda, whom we also had on this show, scientist at the Philippine University of the Philippines Marine Science Institute, MSI, no? So please check that. And he emphasized conservative estimate pa ito, no? Itong 33 billion pesos na nawala sa atin. So this is around $600 million. So tama yung how I remembered the figures on this. Again, of course, Commodore Tarriela, we're asking you this because when it comes to Philippine Coast Guard, can you remind people ano yung mandato nyo? Kasi kanina lang pinag-usapan natin, si Zaldico ay mas malaki pa yung kanyang air fleet sa inyo na hindi pa natin ginamit to pick up Harry. Pustahan pa namin ni Sir Ronald, sinong unang uwi, Zaldi or Harry? Sama talaga ni Sir Ronald. Mas mabilis daw naubusan yung isa eh. But anyway, on a serious note, I mean, just to remind people, kasi papunta tayo dito sa mga interesting surveys. I'm looking at surveys at Pulse Asia and Okta. Both of them show significant amount of support for Philippine Coast Guard. In fact, the Philippine Coast Guard comes out as one of the most revered and respected institutions in the country. And there's tremendous amount of support, 80%, 90%, whether ito yung Okta, whether ito yung Pulse Asia, dun sa pagsuporta sa inyong transparency initiative. So, Commodore Tarriela, I know everyone is familiar with you kasi parati kang may kaaway na sa mga kaibigan natin na. But kidding aside, not only because of your visibility in media, social media, but just for people to understand, ano ba yung specific mandato ng Philippine Coast Guard at ano yung mga ginagawa ng Coast Guard over the past few years at importantly, ano yung mga nagiging kakayahan ng Philippine Coast Guard because some of our good friends like Dr. Jeff or Daniel would argue that actually the Philippine Coast Guard is one of the most successful cases of transformation, going from almost kind of a regional laggard to now one of the leading coast guards in the region. Can you ano yung lay of the land, Commodore?
Well, para sa akin, Richard, no, ang utilization ng Coast Guard vessels in the West Philippine Sea is not something new. No? This actually started during the time of President Noynoy Aquino,
Right.
and even the capability developed in the Coast Guard started as early as Noynoy Aquino's administration. In 2012, when the Chinese resisted arrest ng kanilang Filipino fishermen, we changed the approach from using warship. We did the white-to-white ship strategy to counter itong propaganda ng China na we are militarizing the dispute way back in 2012. 2013, when President Noynoy came to Japan, his first priority is to convince Prime Minister Abe to support the capability development of Coast Guard for acquiring more vessels, in which happened during the time of President Noynoy. And then President Duterte, to be fair with him, he is actually very instrumental for the significant increase of the Philippine Coast Guard.
Right.
Way back in 2016, we're only roughly 8,900. But under his term, he supported the expansion of the human resource of the Coast Guard to as many as 37,000. Right now, under this administration, we are now 36,000 strong. So the same thing with President Marcos. He is once again using the Coast Guard vessels to maintain our presence in the West Philippine Sea, to prevent the normalization of the illegal activities of Chinese government, and at the same time, to make sure that anything that will go wrong in the West Philippine Sea will be de-escalated easily. A lot of maritime security scholars are arguing that the deployment of gray hull or military ships, there's a higher possibility of miscalculation. And that is something that the Philippine Coast Guard is offering right now to make sure that there will be no miscalculation,
Mhm.
and the tension will always be de-escalated.
Commodore, ano yung kahalagahan ng transparency initiative na ginagawa natin over the past 2 or 3 years? Because yun ang usually kinikriticize ng, even, I would say, some of our neighbors, unfortunately, or in-imply nila na parang tayo pa yung nagpo-provoke sa China. Pero ano ba talaga itong transparency initiative na ito? Paano ito binuo at nasaan tayo ngayon in terms of upholding yung ating karapatan dyan sa ating mga karagatan?
Thank you, Richard. No? Alam mo, ang transparency efforts started February of 2023 when
Right.
the Chinese Coast Guard used military-grade laser against BRP Malapascua while it was patrolling Ayungin Shoal in 2023. So the reason why our National Security Advisor, Secretary Eduardo Año, recommended this to the President because we believe that we need to increase the awareness of the Filipino people. It's very difficult for you to sustain your fight in the West Philippine Sea if you do not have the majority support of the Filipinos. And the only way that you can get their support is when you educate them, you keep them
Right.
informed, so that they can understand what are you fighting for and why you are fighting for it. So that is the first objective. And the second objective is to make the international community aware of what's happening in the West
Right.
Philippine Sea. It's very difficult for a small country like the Philippines to do a head-on exposure of the Chinese aggression. If we will be only but ourselves so, alone standing against the Chinese aggression. So we want the international world to know that in this part of the world, China is the one that violates international law, and that China is the one that harasses ordinary Filipino fishermen, and that they are endangering the rules-based order that we all enjoy right now.
Salamat for that, Commodore. So, obviously, nasa second part na tayo ng Marcos Jr. administration. What are our expectations or hopes, rather? Of course, this is above your pay grade, but like, ano yung hope natin in the next 2 or 3 years in terms of institutionalizing etong transparency initiative? I mean, do you think, again, from your, again, this is our policy decision, I understand, but from your understanding of facts on the ground, kailangan ba ito maging tuloy-tuloy throughout the different administration, or this is more of a stopgap measure? Ano bang tingin niyo dito sa transparency initiative?
Well, para sa akin, Richard, no, it's important na ang ating kabataang Pilipino, the next generation of Filipinos understand anything and everything about the West Philippine Sea.
Right.
Sabi nga ni Justice Carpio, our fight in the West Philippine Sea is
It's
intergenerational,
generational,
not
yeah.
in our lifetime that we can really be able to say na naging maayos na ang West Philippine Sea. So, if there's one thing that we really wanted to maximize under this administration, is to incorporate the West Philippine Sea to the curriculum of the Filipino
Right.
youth. It's important for them to understand this. And at the same time, I believe that the transparency of the National Task Force for the West Philippine Sea allows the Filipino people to make sure that this will be an election issue, that West Philippine Sea will be a consideration for our national voters. Na kapag bumoto sila, they need to size up and evaluate whether the next president of this country will be fighting for the West Philippine Sea, or this is somebody who's going to pick up what President Bongbong Marcos has started.
I mean, obviously, the numbers are quite encouraging. No? So I'm looking at the Octa survey, for instance, yung support for continuing the transparency initiative. Overall, at least 8 out of 10 Filipinos. If you look at it here, it's interesting. Pinakamababa is ba?
Richard, pwede
Yes.
mag-time out muna?
Time out. Yeah, yeah. Sige, once again. Let me pause lang. Once again.
Okay, naiihi lang ako.
One second.
Recording stopped.
Just a second.
Okay.
Please, one second. Yeah, yeah. No problem. Alright, guys. Nag, uh, nag-break lang. Just a moment. Tuloy-tuloy lang. Shucks. Antok pa ako ang aga dito. Ah, long day. Long day. Harry, nagkalat na naman si Harry. Tingnan ko itong pinost ni Harry Roque. Pinost ni Harry Roque. para sa bayan. Maritas lang kami dito. Ano daw?
Hello, sir. We're
Okay.
back.
Alright. Back to reality.
Hinihina ako.
Sige. Try ko papatanggalin ko to sa editor.
Recording
All right,
in progress.
we're back. We had to have Tito break. Okay. Commodore, going back to this. Don't worry, we're in the last part of our discussion. I know medyo umikot tayo na konti. Na-distract lang ko the whole Harry and Zaldi. I'm so sorry. I was really concerned kung kailangan na siya iuwi sa pauwiin sa Pilipinas. But Commodore, going back to this, I mean, you must be quite encouraged by some of these numbers. I mean, you look at it. Interesting sa Octa survey, Balance Luzon yung medyo mababa. Again, it's 7 out of 10. But Mindanao is actually the highest. 89% ng ating mga kababayan in Mindanao supported Transparency Initiative. You can also see similarly appreciative numbers in Pulse Asia. Pulse Asia is also around 89%, although mas mataas yung other parts of the country. But how do you see that? Na it looks like Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao, lahat tayo were unified on the importance of this West Philippine Sea issue transparency initiative. It looks like hindi totoo na meron tayong North-South divide. Mukhang hindi totoo na yung mga Duterte or yung mga katulad nila were able to create, unfortunate misperceptions about West Philippine Sea. These are very encouraging numbers, aren't they, Commodore Tarriela?
Yes. Para sa akin, ang transparency effort natin, no, for more than 2 years already, have really reached
Right.
everybody from Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao, and in all walks of life. If you can also look at the social classes, A,
Right.
B, C, D, and E. Lahat to above
Right.
19. So
Yeah.
para sa akin, ang impact na ginagawa natin ng pagsasapubliko ng mga insidente na to ng West Philippine Sea makes the Filipino really brings out their sense of patriotism.
Right.
Kaya nga, ang argument ko before, when people are saying na wag na tayong masyadong maglabas ng insidente sa West Philippine Sea kasi nadi-desensitize ang mga kababayan nating Pilipino.
Correct.
And my argument to that is, we have been colonized by foreign countries before we had our independence and freedom. Wala namang nagsabi sa mga bayaning Pilipino natin na hayaan na natin kasi 3 centuries naman, colonized na talaga tayo ng Spain, di ba? Nagkaroon pa rin tayo ng katipunan, nagkaroon pa rin ng triusan para ipagtanggol ng ating sariling kasarinlan. So, para sa akin, the information that we are providing to the Filipino people awaken their sense of patriotism. That when you talk about the West Philippine Sea, you are actually talking about our national identity as Filipinos. So kung taga Mindanao ka man, Luzon or Visayas, mangingisda ka man, may kaya sa buhay o aristokrata, pag sinabing West Philippine Sea, laban nating lahat to bilang Pilipino.
I want to say heartfelt to Commodore, hindi ako lang dahil lang bisita kita dito sa podcast. Really congratulations. I've seen the effort of the Philippine Coast Guard, Philippine Navy, everyone sa ating gobyerno over the past few years. I mean, I'm now based in the UK. Everywhere I go. I was just in Canada the other month. I was in Poland the other month. Lahat sila, they're so impressed, Commodore Tarriela, with what you and other folks involved in the Transparency Initiative have accomplished. And I'm even happier now to see na hindi lang international community, pero also yung ating kababayan across Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao have this almost universal support dito sa Transparency Initiative. So for me, this is a huge accomplishment, and congratulations again, Commodore. Obviously, we're not here to be complacent. Alam natin na mahabang usapan ito. Sana hindi naman intergenerational masyado. Sana still within our lifetime we see a good resolution to this. But Commodore, having said that, of course, international diplomacy will be very important. As we speak, The ASEAN summit, is in motion. President Trump just yesterday, together with Prime Minister Anwar, oversaw a major peace deal. And soon, the Philippines will be officially the new chair of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. So, Philippines will be once again at the center of global diplomacy and expectations. Maybe next year, not only Trump, but President Xi Jinping may also visit perhaps Manila. So, having said that, Admiral, gaano ka mahalaga yung regional diplomacy natin? Because we tend to do very well among major democracies of this world, like-minded democracies, right? Whether it's India, whether it's Britain, whether it's Canada. I saw that myself visiting all of these countries and meeting their top officials and experts. Pero in terms of yung ASEAN, which is a very diverse mixed community, the most diverse region in the world by some indicators, what should we do? And the reason I'm mentioning that is that you guys, there's going to be a major conference next month, right? And my sense here is that some of this Manila Dialogue conferences we're having is also helping creating that kind of sense of regional dialogue and regional solidarity. How important are these kinds of dialogues, Dr. Tarriela?
Well, alam mo naman, Richard, no? The Chinese government are also very active in coming up with Track 1 dialogue, Track 1.5, and Track 2 dialogues, no? And every time that they have this kind of dialogue and engaging academic policymakers all over the world, um, they really don't care whether these are they're advancing their own misinformation and wrong interpretation of the international law. They're very good in twisting all this and eventually convincing its listeners na sila ang may tamang direksyon pagdating sa usapin ng 2016 Arbitral Award, for example, or the 9-line, now 10-line. They
Yeah.
are changing the discourse for their own advantage. And that is the reason why it's important for the Philippines and other Southeast Asian countries. Alam mo, before our Manila dialogue on November 5 to 7, there will be a South China Sea conference also with which will be held in Vietnam.
Right.
So the Vietnamese has been doing this for over
Right.
70
Yeah.
years already.
Right.
And they're very successful in countering all the lawfare and misinformation and fake news and wrong interpretation of the Chinese government. And that is something that we are adopting right now. Dito sa Pilipinas, meron tayong Manila strategy in which Greg Pauling also led. In the next coming weeks, there will be Manila Dialogue, of course, convened by Dr. Jeffrey or Daniel of the We Protect Our Seas Foundation. We need more this kind of dialogue
Right.
for us to advance the power of the international law, the essence of multilateralism, the issue of the damage to marine environment, IUUF, all these kind of things, climate change, that we can all say now we need to cooperate and then counter all of this illegal and egregious violation of China in the entire South China Sea.
Is this potentially a kind of a new golden age in Philippine diplomacy or public diplomacy for that matter? Or is that something that we can reasonably hope towards, Dr. Tarriela?
Well, alam mo, Richard, I cannot speak for diplomacy.
Mm.
That is not one of the hats that I'm wearing right now. But as an academic, I just see how important there is to have a Track 1.5 dialogue.
Right.
Alam mo naman ang mga academic, katulad mo, Richard, hindi sa chismoso or chismosa tayo, but we base our understanding of things with data. And sometimes the Chinese are very good in leading the discourse because they really don't care whether the data that they're going to present or their argument that they're going to say is in line with international law, or these are just made up historical claims.
Um, since we started with Polong, maybe we want to end with Sara Duterte. I mean, just so. I mean, what is your? I mean, I think it's pretty clear that when it comes to President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., I can disagree with a million things with this administration. But in fairness, on West Philippines and foreign policy, I think he has been, to put it gently, a pleasant surprise for a lot of people who were worried about continuity of policies that we saw under Duterte because of the whole unity glad things move in the right direction, and I want to give due credit to the administration on that front. And glad that they have people as competent as you and many others Secretary Yusek Malaya, so many good people in Philippine Navy, National Security Council, Coast Guard, etc. This is great. This is amazing. At the same time, you still have a vice president, who in some surveys is a front runner to be the next president. I don't want to talk about the whole impeachment, whatever issue. It complicates everything. But nevertheless, I mean, I'm yet to hear from our vice president a full throat support for uh, our transparency initiative, for what we're doing in the West Philippines. I mean, this is a vice president who has made statements on everything on earth, right, including conflicts in the Middle East, which I welcome. I think I even support a lot of statement that Vice President Sara Duterte has made on ending conflicts in the Middle East. I actually think she's saying the right things. In fairness, I am with her on a lot of her interventions about conflict resolutions in other parts of the world. And of course, the closest conflict is the one happening, or potential conflict is the one happening sa sarili natin bakuran. So I'm quite surprised with that gap whereby you have a vice president has everything to say about faraway conflicts, but for some reason, I just never felt that kind of assertiveness here. And I don't want to even comment about her Mandarin, right? Because when someone joked na the way she did Mandarin greeting, the I don't know, PLA ba yan, yung anniversary, was like someone doing French and then reading it as it's written. It's like, Bourdieu is like Bourdieu X or something. But anyways, I don't want to get into that. But so, I mean, honestly, Commodore, again, I know the politics is not your thing. You're a professional. You're isa kang bayani. You're doing what you're doing. But what do you feel about this? That someone who could still be our next president, someone is number two, he was the vice president. Forget about yung mga kapatid niya, tatay niya, archive na yung isa. How do you feel about that? Should we be worried about this, or are you hoping that in the coming years, the vice president will be much more forthcoming about her position and hopefully support, no, dun sa ating mga ginagawa sa West Philippine Sea?
Well, honestly, Richard, every single day, ang gusto ko talaga, I'm very hopeful na sana si pangalawang Pangulo natin, no? Si Vice President Sara, kapag may mga insidente, would really show up and say something for the Coast Guard or BFAR or the ordinary Filipino fishermen who are subjected to harassment and bullying of the People's Republic of China. That is something that I always hope for every time. Unfortunately, for more than 2 years of doing this and exposing Chinese aggression, wala pa tayong naririnig sa kanya. So if your question is, what if she'll run for president, or if ever she will be, I would probably have the same hopes and prayers. I hope she'll have a change of heart and realize that West Philippine Sea belongs to the Filipino people, and it is her constitutional obligation to do everything that is possible within the bounds of her legal power to make sure that we're not going to surrender a square inch of our territory to any foreign power.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Commodore Tarriela. If for people are wondering how could they help yung ating laban sa West Philippines, kung ikaw ay isang ordinaryong mamamayan, how could you help, Commodore Tarriela? What are the ways by which we can have a whole of nation approach?
Well, there are two ways that you can support the Philippine government in our fight in the West Philippine Sea. The first one is to counter fake news and misinformation. You don't have to be the spokesperson of the Philippine Coast Guard to call out, like, those statements of Congressman Duterte or Mayor Basti Duterte. As a Filipino, you have social media accounts. Post it on your social media that you're not agreeing with whatever lies and misinformation that you hear that undermines our own position in the West Philippines. It's important for us to do that. It's important for us right now to have a pushback against misinformation. This is already a battle for every one of us to put an end on misinformation about the West Philippines. Secondly, the most important thing and the biggest patriotic duty that you can do for the next years of our government is to go out and vote. To go out in 2028, if you're not registered right
Yeah.
now, register. and make sure that in 2028 you're going to exercise your right of suffrage. Because, again, the fate of this country will only be decided if we choose the right people. Ilang beses na natin napag-usapan to, Richard. Ang sabi ko, the Filipino people deserve who they voted for. So I hope this time around, we're going to consider the West Philippine Sea as an election vote, as an election issue. Para siguraduhin natin ang West Philippine Sea will not just be a promise that will be
Right.
mentioned in one of those political campaigns, and then eventually babawiin, sasabihin joke lang.
Right.
There's no reason for anybody to joke about the West Philippine Sea. Ang laban natin ito ay obligasyon natin para sa susunod na saling lahi ng Pilipinas.
And Admiral, I'm not saying that you should run in 2028, but do you think do you think there should be kind of a team Philippines running for 2028, from president to senators and different slates? Do you think that's important? Again, I know this is it is a political question, but actually it's also relevant, right? I mean, we need good leaders at every level, right? And meron tayong opportunity in 2028, right? Do we need a team Philippines?
Yes. Para sa akin, ang Team Philippines, those politicians are that you can elect na hindi pumupondo ng korupsyon for flood control, for
Right.
example. Ito ay may concern sa ordinaryong Pilipino. At pangatlo sa lahat, ito ay tumitindig para sa ating karapatan sa West Philippine Sea.
Maraming salamat, Commodore Tarriela. Again, I'm sorry, I'm not at my 100% at around 7 a.m. or so, and I kind of regret I threw Harry and Zaldi into this. I was worried baka mapahamak kita with all of these mga kulit games. But thank you so much. Almost an hour of conversation went super breezy. This is one of the things I always appreciated whenever we had our conversations, Commodore Dr. Tarriela. Mabuhay ka. May there be more people like you. Our prayers for you, and please tuloy lang laban. I know it's so stressful. I know it from my own experience past decades. But I'm so glad to see na fresh kayo. Ganda ng camera niyo, Commodore Tarriela. Fresh. Nainggit ako bigla eh. Thank you so much, Commodore Tarriela, and looking forward.
Thank you, Richard.
And again, best wishes also for the upcoming Manila Dialogue. Sorry, last one. Like, where can people pala follow you, Commodore Tarriela, for people who are interested to follow you?
Well, you can follow me on Twitter at J Tarriela, or even in Facebook. My complete name, J Tarriela. And also in TikTok. Sinunod kong advice sa Char, no? We need to have those
Right.
videos that are educational, that will explain ordinary Filipinos saan ang West Philippine Sea, ang pinakaiba nito sa South China Sea. Those kind of reels we are producing para ma-explain sa ating kabataan kung ano at saan ang West Philippine Sea.
Tsaka may drone shots. Napakaganda yung mga drone shots. Vlogger si Commodore Tarriela. Mabuhay ka, Commodore Dr. Tarriela, for another fantastic discussion, and looking forward to catching up in person and continuing this great conversation. Salamat.
Thank you, Richard.
God bless. Thank you very much, guys. Tuloy na ako dun sa mga next meetings natin. Maaga pa lang dito. Pasensya na, medyo napansin ko I'm not as sharp as I wanted to be. Hopefully hindi ako nagkalat. But I think we got enough out of that interesting conversation. Please check out yung latest back and forth ni Commodore Tarriela and mga Duterte family. But yun nga, takot ako, mga madulas ako. Government official kasi kausap natin, hindi si Sir Ronald or mga retired official. So I have to be careful. Magaling naman si Dr. Tarriela. He's a sharp thinker. So sharp siya, mabilis lang. No problem. Anyways, guys, maraming salamat, guys. Tuloy-tuloy lang natin ito. Hopefully, within the week, we can arrange other interesting conversation. I'm still trying to really put everything together. Medyo nakakapagod, squeezing in everything with the time zone differences and all. But I'm glad that over the past month, we were able to do that. And sana we still can maintain this over the next month while we're figuring out getting back sa ating minamahal na bansa. Namimiss ko na rin ang Pilipinas, so we can get things going. Alright? But in the meantime, I hope people also understand I needed some breather from all the meat grinder crazy situation back home. Alam ko na miss din tayo ng mga trolls. But on that note, thank you very much, guys. Maraming salamat. Please don't forget to follow us on different platforms, and also importantly, follow Commodore Tarriela, supporting, share his stuff. Amazing guy, great guy, wonderful guy.